Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pipe Dream and our 100 and 100 series. I'm very excited today to be joined by Dmitry. Dmitry, welcome to Pipe Dream.
Thank you for having me, Jason. I've been excited for this one.
So tell me a little about who you are and what you do.
For sure. My name is Dmitry Shamis. I'm co-founder of a brand systems agency called OhSnap. You guys are getting the exclusive here. This is the first time this hat's been on camera. I started this agency earlier this year to solve a major problem within B2B, which is scaling creative. It's a problem I faced when I ran creative at HubSpot. And now see it across the entire industry. So with AI, with all of the changes and shifts, like brand systems are really the future and the way to kind of like shift thinking, shift perceptions, differentiate your brand. And it's been a lot of fun building this thing. I'm, calling from Chicago right now. I'm a New York City guy originally. Trying to keep it short. I host a podcast called What's Your Process, which you can check out. I have a newsletter called The Brief Creative, which, as you could tell, I'm clearly very brief. So, that's all about me, father of three. Just like I said, excited to be here.
Awesome. And a Man United fan, obviously, of 35 years, you were saying just before we hit the record button.
Yeah, I didn't realize that I was gonna double up here with the scarf and the coffee mug, but here I am. Glory, glory, Man United. We're turning this around.
Yeah, awesome. Well, look, you used the word that is on the top of everyone's mind right now, which is AI. And I'd love to get your thoughts on like what is a piece of conventional marketing B2B wisdom that just seems totally backward or doesn't make sense anymore in a world of AI?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think the idea that you need to focus on repeatable assets and like create at scale is something that is controversial because that's what a lot of people are using AI for. But I think with AI, we've never had more of an opportunity to create things that are good by removing the things that suck to do, frankly, from our plates. So I've been pushing a lot of folks to really think about not quantity, but quality and think about how you can get the busy work off of your plate using AI so that you can actually create time to be creative and try new things and experiment and really kind of blow the door off things. So like that old school notion of we need to drop blog posts, we need to do social every day, we need to do all of the things the same way, I think is long gone, and I'm so here for it.
Awesome. I mean, you're obviously a B2B marketing veteran. You've now got a load of different initiatives going on for your own business. You've got the podcast, you're active on LinkedIn, you've got the newsletter. You're obviously covering a lot of different bases. If you had to kill 80% of that and just focus on like the 20% that's really driving value for your business, what would you choose and why? And like, how would you double down on that channel?
LinkedIn. I would say 95% of business comes from LinkedIn, and a lot of that comes from just honestly having fun. Like, yes, I'll react to things that are going on in the world. Yes, I will share frameworks and thinking and case studies and all of the traditional things that you would see. But also, like, it's an opportunity to connect on a human level. And I think we are at this like really interesting intersection where LinkedIn is, it's not a professional social network. It still is, but like the humanity has kind of like made its way in there, which I think is great because the reality is like a lot of what we do, whether we sell products, whether we provide services, like there are at least a dozen other people or companies out there that do almost the exact same thing. So when you're choosing what to, who to work with, what to buy, what not to buy, it gets to a certain point where it's like, well, I'm going to be working with these people every day for the next 6 months. I'm going to be interacting with their customer service team for the next 2 years because that's what my contract length is, whatever it might be. Like you're going to want to choose people that you enjoy and want to spend time with and want to get to know more or want to learn from. And I think LinkedIn gives you that opportunity to kind of like say, hey, this is what I'm good at, but also this is who I am. And like, I'll throw in random like gardening things. I'll throw in stuff about my kids. I'll throw in just like random dumb things I'll see in the street that I think are funny. And sometimes they perform, sometimes they don't. But like, that's also kind of an inference into like, if you work with OhSnap, if you work with Dmitry, you're going to get some really good stuff. You're also going to hear some dumb things from time to time. And like, hopefully you laugh.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And what it makes me think about is like where that line exists between like being human and being cringy. I'm sure you've seen it all the time, right? Like I'll open up my LinkedIn feed and you'll see like a picture of a banana peel, and there'll be a load of, okay, here's what a banana peel taught me about B2B marketing. And it just comes across as like super inauthentic, super cringy. It does well, like the engagement seems high, but for me personally as a creator, it doesn't jive. And I'm just curious to get your thoughts on like, where does that line exist for you around, okay, I want to share who I am beyond just the professional version of myself and use that as a way to get people to trust me and know me, and, you know, creating content that just feels really clickbaity, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I never want to create anything clickbaity. That's like that's kind of the line. It's like, will I make a sarcastic, here's what I learned about B2B marketing from whatever post here and there? Absolutely. And it's not meant to be, it's meant to make fun of those things. Um, but I don't know. I try to push people to push themselves and to try different things and experiment in a lot of ways. So like I'll do the same thing, and ultimately I'm a big believer in that, like if you're not feeling uncomfortable, you're not growing.
Mm.
So even if I post something that ends up being a total failure, there's something to learn from that. It's like, okay, don't post about that topic anymore. Don't use that format. So for me, a lot of it is I want to push myself, and I want to, like, I don't want to be cringy by any means, but I want to make myself slightly uncomfortable with some of what I post. And then we go from there and we learn whether people respond to it or whether I'm a LinkedIn lunatic.
Yeah, well, look, I think you're touching on a really interesting point, which is it's better, it's like good rather than perfect, right? Like just ship what you can ship as quickly as you can, to the lowest level of quality that you will accept, and start analyzing the data points that you get back. Like I have definitely agonized over posts for days, weeks, months, and never hit send because I just wanted it to be totally perfect, or, you know, I was worried about how it was going to be interpreted, and like, you know, almost trying to control people's reactions to it before I've even put it out into the world, when it would have been better just to hit that publish button after V2 and see what the audience is saying back to me. I mean, have you ever found yourself in that situation before where you've kind of been on the edge of, should I post this or not?
Absolutely. It happens probably every day. And you know, the posts that I nitpick over and worry about are every time those are the posts that don't do anything, unless they're more vulnerable, perhaps. Because like that's the other part of this, right? Where it's like, is this something personal that I don't know if I want to share versus like, is this cringy or not? I think that those are kind of like two different spectrums here. And on the personal side, of course, you're going to stop and think and reconsider from time to time. On the cringy side, it's always just like, ugh. But I find the more I agonize over any post, the worse it performs.
Yeah.
The more off the cuff it tends to be, the better it usually is, because you have more raw emotion in there. You have sillier word choice, let's say. You know, because like when we go back and edit, we take out a lot of personality, intentionally or unintentionally, and I think the personality is what makes the difference.
Yeah. So look, changing gears a little bit here. If I were to hand you a check for $50,000 and say to you, Dmitry, I want you to go out there, use this money to build an audience, not a campaign, what would you do?
Oh, you'd never see me again. I would take that money and run. Uh, no, what would I do? So if you handed me a check for 50 grand right now, I think that I would spend it on, frankly, what I sell, which I know is not the intent behind your question, but like I think a lot of companies struggle with building audiences because they don't have the right tools to show up consistently in the right places and in the right ways. And so, you know, it's like it's one of those things where, you know, I'll do whatever it takes to show up, and I'll pay whatever money, and then all of a sudden you don't know what's working, you don't know what's not working. And so like I'm a big believer in brand, obviously. Like this is my brand hat, this is like what my business is, this is all of the things. And for me, like, and this even goes back to your question on LinkedIn from a moment ago, like thinking about even just like carousels and graphics, things like that. Like knowing that I have templates ready to go and that I can work off of those makes my life easier, because I don't have to worry about how it looks. I have to worry about what it says. And if it's meaningful and the message is right, the framework is right, whatever it is, that's going to resonate in a different kind of way. And I think you need that on your website. You need that within your team to kind of build that internal DNA. And then after that, you start your paid, you start driving people to landing pages, you start doing webinars and all of the kind of like events that we're starting to see pop up. But for me, if I didn't have the kind of like Lego pieces to build a brand and create content with, that's where I would start.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to creating content, thought leadership, building out brands, one of the questions and kind of pushbacks we often get in our agency is like, well, how do we actually go about measuring all of this? Because there's the vanity stuff and then there's like the real stuff and the commercial outcomes that ultimately all of our clients are looking to drive. Are there any kind of metrics that you think when you're looking at your business and your brand and that of your clients that are red herrings? Like, are there metrics out there that are maybe leading marketing teams down a road that are giving them a false view or a false vision of what actually is working and what's not?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, impressions, views, the kind of like the vanity metrics that are traditionally like we're all excited about, or like even clicks. Like, cool, they clicked and saw a website. Like our website is one page long. It's like a very simple landing page. That doesn't mean that anything is going to come from that, right? I had a post go somewhat viral a week or so ago, 100,000 impressions, which for me is really, really big.
Yeah.
And I've gotten zero leads from it.
Hmm.
And like that's the whole thing where it's like, oh, you go to management or the exec team, it's like, oh well, this one, like 100,000 people know who we are. Do they?
Yeah.
Or did 100,000 people just kind of like scroll past it, watch for a second or read and then move on? So I think it's those kind of like initial vanity metrics that don't matter, and that's why we call them that. But a lot of people use those to justify increased spend or investment. And for me, like I've started to think more about DMs. Like, are people actually reaching out? Are people engaging with the content, not in a, oh, cool, I love this sort of way, but oh, wow, this made me think a little differently. Like when I start seeing that, when I start seeing messages, when I start seeing obviously meetings show up on the calendar, that's when I know the content is resonating. Like I've stopped caring about impressions. I've stopped caring about follower count as well, because like I'll go to my list and it's just like a bunch of people from random industries that I'm glad they seem to resonate with the content and they like it, but like we will never work together.
Hmm.
It's one of those like they're like I have construction workers in my follower list. I have people who are, just doing all sorts of random things. They are not building brands. They don't, not that they don't care about that, but it's not their job to focus on. So, I want to make sure that the people, and this is a very rambling answer, so I apologize, but like I want to make sure that the people that are seeing and engaging with my content are people that I can work with. And that's where, again, like those DMs and general engagements become really important.
I mean, how do you go about thinking around like optimizing the content for things like DMs? Because I'm totally with you, right? Like these kind of qualitative indicators of success around, people DMing you, people like you go to a conference and someone says, hey, I listened to your last episode. It was fantastic. Like that all holds value. And to me talks to this idea of like resonance. We're creating content that has resonance with our audience. But I feel like there has to be intentionality around that. Like you have to intentionally go into creating this content with the idea of what can I create that is going to prompt someone to like reach out to me proactively and tell me how great they found that piece of content. Is that something that kind of crosses your mind in the work that you do across the podcast, the newsletter, and your work on LinkedIn?
For sure, especially on LinkedIn and the newsletter. The podcast is slightly different, but obviously I want it to work for the business as well. But it's the kind of like the less fun side of it in terms of, it's not the random nonsense my kids are doing or us going to the pumpkin patch. So when I think about, work we're doing for clients, for example, like the problems that one client is having are probably the same problems that a bunch of other people are having. They either don't realize it or they don't know where to go for it. So I'll look at the work I'm doing on a day-to-day basis and think about how do we frame this up in a way that is relevant in a broader sense, right? And then I'll create content around that. And then this is so silly because it's literally marketing 101, but For the longest time, I would post things that I thought were fantastic. Like I'd be like, I would try to look at them as objectively as possible and be like, this was so good. This was so smart. No one's talking about this. No one's thinking about this. And it'd be crickets. And then a friend of mine, she was just like, why don't you add a CTA? Was like, wait, what? Like I can do that. And I started just writing things like, like hit me up if you have any questions, or, my DMs are open. And I'm not going to say like the floodgates opened up, but all of a sudden, like, things started trickling in. And I was like, yeah, obviously people may not know what to do with it. So just tell them what to do with this content. Sometimes, yeah, if it's a template, sure, download it, fill it out, do whatever you need to do, use it. But if it's just like a way of thinking or a series of questions or something like that, like give them an outlet to follow up.
Yeah, I love that. Bringing things back to AI, because I just came back from SaaStock in Dublin. So I spent 3 days, talking to founders, B2B marketers, and like the one thing everyone's talking about is AI. I'm curious to get your thoughts as a marketer. What is the industry catastrophizing about AI that probably isn't a bigger deal as possible? And on the flip side of that, do you think that there are risks AI present to us as marketers that maybe we're not thinking about enough?
Oh man, two fantastic questions. Okay. So, what are we making a big deal out of? I think the whole like, oh, you clearly wrote this with AI is just so overblown. Like, oh, you used an M dash, you used like a piece of punctuation that people don't use normally, whatever the LinkedIn, rant of the day is. But ultimately, I think if the work is good, the work is good. And it doesn't matter. Like I do a fair amount of writing with AI, not my LinkedIn content, but I'll do other work with AI. And like for me, when I'm thinking about that writing, it's not just like, okay, here's a prompt, write whatever, and then it comes back and I go, great, this is perfect, let's ship it. It's the editing process. So it's like, okay, you know what? Editing something is easier than coming up with it, right? So it's a starting point. I don't like this. I don't like that. Change these words. Let's think about paragraph 2 in this way. And then all of a sudden you're in this editing process that makes life much easier. And you may not be writing all of the words, but you'll still usually write some of them. And then you can come up with something that's actually really good that, let's say, AI wrote, or AI wrote the majority of. So ultimately, I'm not as scared of AI wrote this anymore as I think people want me or others to be. And then in terms of like what are the potential issues or scary things, like I think people are getting lazy. That's my biggest fear. Like people are not thinking. It's much easier to just go and ask a question and get a response and just assume it's right and kind of roll with it. So I one of the things I always say is like never outsource your thinking. And I think a lot of a lot of folks in the B2B marketing space specifically have done that. And you could see it in the work, you could see it in the content, you could see it in the fact that like all of it looks exactly the same, and that kills me as a brand guy.
I think you should put that on a t-shirt. Don't outsource your thinking. I think that would probably sell out with B2B marketers for sure. I wonder what you think the antidote then is, and like, how do we overcome that, like as a challenge and as a risk as an industry, and like what opportunities does it present to marketers listening to this who are nodding their heads and adhering to this idea of, okay, I'm gonna use AI for the executional piece, but I'm gonna keep the thinking here, like within the business and the people within it.
I don't know, I still like my desk is still covered with notebooks and pens. So I'm having conversations, I'm writing things down, I'm going back to my notes because like there are things where like, I'll have a similar conversation to this one, and then I'll just have like a side thought or like a tangent in my brain that I may not say out loud. So that tangent never makes it into a transcript, right? That tangent never something that AI can look at and be like, oh yeah, Dmitry was thinking, because they can't read minds. So for me, I still believe in writing things down, and doing things analog, but also like before I jump into the work, it's more just like my own digest of it and thinking about, you know, I'll I'll give an example. So like, we've been writing a fair amount of brand stories lately for clients, and when I do that, I like to interview them. It's nothing novel, nothing no one has ever thought of before, right? Like I'll interview them, we'll have a conversation, I'll record the calls, And then after each call, I'll just kind of jot down a few things that stood out to me or mark them in my notes as to like, oh, you know what? Like this idea is resonating, or this specific line has come up in 3, 4 conversations now. This is important. And so like when I go to use the AI tools to help me maybe draft a V1, the prompt will include those things. Like make sure we're thinking about this, make sure we're thinking about how this ties into the idea of X, Y, or Z. Like for me, like I come into it with a fully baked idea and direction. I don't look for AI to be like, oh, this conversation with Jason is all about AI, so you should, the story is this. It's like I know what the story is. I just now want to build the words around it, and that comes from writing it down.
Awesome. Dmitry, look, as we try and wrap up this interview, I'd be really keen to hear like what B2B brands are there out there, or individual creators that you really admire? What is it that they're doing that you love and would love to be able to emulate or build on if you had the resources and the budget to do so?
It's a fantastic question. You know what? I'm going to shout out Jess Cook at Vector. I think what they're doing is really interesting, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a personality-led brand. I think, they have their ghost mascot. I was at an event with Jess a couple of weeks ago. It was Exit 5's Drive event in Vermont. And she was telling me how she walked through the airport with just a duffel bag of ghost toys, because that's their symbol. And like, I think it's simple things like that where it's like not being afraid of what TSA thinks about you, because there are people who just wouldn't do that. And it's like they have a great podcast that she does with their CEO Josh. That's this podcast could have been a meeting, or no, it could have been an email. I'm butchering it, so sorry, Jess. But like they are just showing up in the right kind of way, and like they have a technical product. It's exciting for the right kind of marketer, I'll say. But, if they were out there just talking about de-anonymizing visitors or whatever, like no one cares about that. So they decided to just really have fun with it. And I love that. And they're not a huge brand. I don't believe they have a huge budget. So that's actually probably a really good blueprint to follow if you're trying to do something that's a little different from the, standard B2B playbook.
You're the second person in 24 hours to recommend Jess to me and the work that she's doing over at Vector. Yeah. I was sat at a meeting yesterday at SaaStock, and I was talking to the CEO, and I was saying, I'm trying to get more people lined up for the podcast. Like, who do you think's doing content, community events, like really well? Like who's like living and breathing that kind of owned media mindset? And he said Jess, and we'll definitely tag her and the work that she's doing at Vector in the show notes of this episode, and hopefully get her onto a future episode of Pipe Dream. But Dmitry, really appreciate your time today. Where can people learn more about you?
Thank you for having me, Jason. So check out ohsnap.agency. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I have, my newsletter, The Brief Creative, which you could sign up for at thebriefcreative.io. What's Your Process is the podcast. I'm, season 2 is coming. I'm just being lazy, if we're being completely honest. But season 1 was really, really good. So yeah, just you could find me in a lot of places. So please do, and hit me up.
Awesome. We'll drop all the links to that in the show notes of this episode. But otherwise, Dmitry, thank you for coming onto this episode of Pipe Dream.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason. This was awesome.
Awesome.